And then long about 300 AD, we begin to get the linkage of these religions begin to be linked with political state forms. About 312, Constantine converts to Christianity, and we get Christianity associated with the Roman state. In the East, meanwhile, we begin to get Mazdaism, the religion of Zoroastrianism, associated officially with the Sassanid state. That happens somewhere in the 3rd century AD. It becomes the official religion of the state. In the kingdom in the south, in Africa, the Axumites convert to Christianity about the same time, 300, while their enemies on the other side of the Red Sea, the Himyarites, had converted to Judaism at about the same time as official state religions. So we begin to see at this time the linkage of these religions with the state, and also at the same time we begin to see the earliest origins in opposition to this of the monastic communities. This is the period of the flourishing in Egypt of the great anchorites, the great Egyptian Christian monks and anchorites who go out into the deserts to practice Christianity on their own. And also at the same time we also have the monastic traditions that form in which the group is part of a monastery. The individual is part of a group, a monastery. So we see these forming at about the same time. Then he says this all comes to a climax with all the various councils in the 4th century AD, in which the various substantialities of the Christian mythos are worked out, and it ends up producing 3 different transformations of Christianity: an Eastern, a Southern, and a Western version of Christianity. He says that the Eastern version of Christianity is the Nestorian version, which comes out of the Council of Ephesus, in which in 431 AD the Council of Ephesus declares that Mary is to be regarded as a Theotokos, a god-bearer. That is to say, in the Western tradition, she is regarded as the mother of a god, and Ephesus, we recall, was the old city of the goddess. Artemis, Diana, was the primary divinity worshipped there. The multi-breasted Diana of Ephesus was worshipped in that city. And here Mary is regarded as giving birth to an actual god. Whereas the Nestorians saw Christ as not a Theotokos, but a Theophorus. That is to say, a man. Mary gives birth to a man who happens to carry the God within him as a spark of divinity. So the Nestorians emphasize Christ's humanity, and that becomes the basic religion of the Christian transformation of the East that penetrates as far, goes all the way to China. Then we have, at about not too long after, in the 4th century, we have the Monophysites, who come out of Syria. They're in the middle zone here. They come out of Syria and they penetrate down into Africa. Egypt becomes a major stronghold of the Monophysite tradition, in which Christ is regarded as, there's just one God. Christ is homoousia. He is not consubstantial, but he is this one substance with his humanity as an attribute, exactly as in Spinoza, in which time and space for Spinoza are attributes of the one substance of God. So for the Monophysites, there's only one substance, God, of which Christ is simply an attribute. So they emphasize his divinity, and they too are exiled in their religion. And this is all consistent, Spengler says, with the iconophobia, the aniconism of the Middle East and on into the East. It's exactly out of this region that Islam will come with its religion of aniconism, whereas the West chose to emphasize, with its love of images, its iconophilia, it chose to emphasize the idea of a consubstantiality between Father and Son. They are the same substance, homoousia. They are the same substance with 2 different attributes, a temporal attribute. So there's more of a balance between Christ's humanity and his divinity. They're one and the same, rather than emphasizing one or the other. That becomes the basic foundation of the Roman Catholic Church. So we have the emphasis on a Pauline transformation, in which Greek becomes the official language in Rome now at this time. A Pauline transformation of Christianity. In the Middle East, we have a Petrine tradition. The early Jewish Christians adhered to the Petrine tradition. The Monophysites come out of this. The Jews have a very strong hold in the Middle East as well. They go all the way down, remember, into Yemen, where they become the official state religion in the 4th century of the Sabians. Then in the East we have the Nestorian tradition, which emphasizes which takes its departure from the Johannine, the John tradition of the John Gospel. And so these are 3 different transformations of Christianity, and the other 2, the 2 Eastern versions, the Nestorians and the Monophysites, eventually are for the most part absorbed and engulfed by Islam. when it breaks free and comes out of this tradition of aniconism, with its emphasis on the idea of just there being one God. In the Western tradition becomes, with the Roman Catholic tradition, it penetrates and becomes the basic religion of the West. It competes at first with Mithraism, which is brought over into the West as far as Great Britain by the Roman soldiers. It's a religion of the Roman soldiers. It did not, women were not allowed to participate in it, and that probably doomed it to becoming a universal religion. But it spread into the West, along with the Arian heresy, not as in Indo-Aryan, but as in the Bishop Arius, who had the idea that Christ was a sort of secondary God, a demigod who was inferior to the ultimate God, Yahweh. That spread amongst the German barbarians for a while and was a major competitor with the Catholic Church's idea of Christianity. And Monarchianism also went into the West. It penetrated into France, and the Albigensian Crusade of the 12th century was basically its last gasp. It was finally exterminated. Mani was the great prophet, as we have seen in 275 AD, who had taken all the great Eastern traditions and tried to synopsize them and put them together into a single crown jewel that was meant to be a rival for the Persian state, the Sassanid Persian state of Zoroastrianism, about the way in which Mithraism in the West was the rival for Christianity as the official state religion of the Roman Empire. In both cases, Mithraism lost out, Monarchianism lost out, Zoroastrianism became the official religion until, with the coming of Islam, Persia was conquered, and in the West with the Catholic Church, which conquered, as we know very well, the West. And so this is the fate of the Magian civilization, and Spengler says this brings it down to about the period of Islam, when it achieved its own unique expression language that was entirely independent of Western late classical form language.